Welcome to the Earth Your Wow podcast, brought to you by Reuserbox, providing a better way to buy cardboard boxes. We're your hosts, Jack and Ellie.
This is the podcast where we talk to industry experts and change makers to try to answer the question, how do we make our businesses better for people and the planet? So today we're joined by Ellie Chapman, founder and creative director at LIM. LIM is a studio of creative thinkers that helps companies get stuff done by visualizing what they talk about. In this episode, we'll be discussing the psychology behind visualizing meetings, using creativity to bring people together and inspire change, how we can reduce the environmental impact of meetings, events, and conferences. Thanks for joining us, Ellie.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Nice to meet you. I was really keen to hear exactly what it is you do, because I never really thought about it before. I didn't know it was a thing, to be honest. So what do you do?
It?
Yeah, what do you do?
What a great question. So in its most simple term, I draw what people talk about in meetings. I have been doing this since I was 22. 21, 22, and so it's been a while now because I'm getting older. But essentially, it's all around visualizing what people are saying, how people are reacting, the decisions that people are making, so that a meeting, a conference, or event has a shared record of what people are talking about, so that when people leave the room that they're in or the online space that they're in, there is a record. One of my biggest pet hates is that people say stuff and it just vanishes into thin air. It's like it's said and then it's gone. And it just think, there's such an opportunity for people to work in a visual way that I think we're only really at the start of doing this thing called graphic recording. So yeah, we draw what people say on big pieces of paper, on cardboard boxes, on our iPads, to help people get stuff done in business.
I was really kind of interested around I guess like the listening side of it, because I'm guessing you must be amazing at listening to be able to do this. And yeah, how do you pick that up? And like, if you've got a group, scenario, how do you pick up what everybody's saying or thinking or listening and kind of shine a light on it? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jack. And if we think about being in the meeting, that's a moment in time, but actually the preparation started happening long before that. So when we think about a run up to a meeting or a conference, there is all that planning. So for example, it's really important for us to know the purpose of the meeting or the purpose of why everyone's getting together. So in a one-liner, why is this important? Then we start thinking about what the expected outcomes are. So what are the three things that people want to take away with them, or it's really important as you as the owner of this thing that's a meeting or this space that you want people to go away with, so we know what those expected outcomes are. And then we think about what the plan is or the agenda, so that when we get in the room, we know what we're listening for. So we're not just going in, just listening there and then. We actually know the wider context of what's happening, and why it's important for all these people to be together, to know what the roles are of everybody in the meeting as well, because that's a big thing. And when we think about being in the room, we've got the agenda, we've got the purpose, we've got what the expected outcomes are, and we've got who everybody is. But then it really is up to being a 3D human. We are ears, we've got our eyes, we can see, but then it's also about picking up on the senses in the room. So you'll have been in a thing, somebody's something and you're like, yeah, and you've got this energy, it's like really filling you with lots of like positivity. Or when you're in a session or in a conversation and you can just feel yourself just like, oh, I'm not sure about that, but there is that kind of, and you can feel it in the room, the presence in the overall room as well. So we're thinking about visualizing. Yes, we've got to be able to listen. Yes, we've got to be able to pick up on senses, and we've got to be able to ask questions, not necessarily when we're recording, but in that prep session, so that we're actually setting ourselves up to be able to listen really well.
I was thinking, like, everyone that is listening to this, that they're either like working in a business. There's a lot of like founders and startup people in the impact space, and usually like they've got an idea and they're trying to get that idea out there. And I think I think it'd be really interesting to understand. Well, actually, I thought it was really interesting that you said start with kind of the objective, because I've just been trying to feel my way through how to have meetings for the last sort of 12 years, trying to build a company. And it's actually one of the simplest things that I learned is if you start a meeting with what's our objective, it just kind of like pinpoints everything and gets everyone on board. But it's interesting that you said start with that. So it's good to know I'm doing something right. But
yes, Jack. And I'm clapping, and literally if you were in the room with me now, I'd be like, yeah, that's really good. So just to say that our sister brand is called TFP, and TFP are a team of facilitators. In fact, my mum is a facilitator, and this is how I got into this work. So I've grown up around helping people have good meetings for my 32 years. So it's in me. And when I was talking to you before about, get clear on the purpose, get clear on the roles, get clear on the expected outcomes, and get clear on the plan. This is the prep framework that TFP use. And we use this before a meeting and during a meeting. And it is like, we do training. And I'm probably giving away the golden goodness of the training. But, if you can do anything in a meeting, do prep before and use it during. There's a really great blog post on the TFP website, which I can send to you, because I think it's just so valuable. And you're right, Jack. Meetings are the unit currency of business and organization. Stuff gets done in meetings, decisions are made in meetings, problems are solved in meetings. Everything happens pretty much in a meeting, but yet we're not taught how to have a really good meeting. And it's just, when we think about coming out of school and then you're like, right, I've got this idea, I'm going to create this business and make this really cool thing. But then we're not taught about how to actually go about that. And it's for us, is such a huge gap. And so the fact that you said, you spent 12 years trying to work out how to have this good thing called a meeting is like, so many people are asking those questions. And the worrying thing is so many people aren't asking the questions and see the word meeting as a bad thing. But it's not the meeting's fault, it's bad. There are many different reasons as to why the meeting might not be as productive as you need it to be.
Yeah, I guess there's that kind of like common like joke, isn't it? Like, oh, I've had all these meetings and they could have just been an email. So
yes,
that people say that all the time, don't they? Particularly, I guess in this kind of era where there's a lot of people working from home, where they're kind of having to jump on like Teams and stuff like that. So when you kind of again, I'm struggling to kind of talk about what you do, but when you go in there and you like draw about what's happening, how do you then, what do you do with that information? Do you like give it out to people? What's the format?
Right, so it's a great question. So you said you're struggling to kind of say what it is that we do, which I just want to make sure it's super clear, because if you're struggling, and because like this thing that we do isn't, it's been going since the 70s, it's not new, but it's really, I see it as a trend picking up within this world of meetings and events. So I want to make it super clear what it is that we do. So I'm now thinking, how am I going to do that? So when I think about, we're in a meeting and people come into the meeting, it's a senior leadership team and they want to work on a new strategy. So the meeting lead gets everybody together and they're going to work on their strategy. They've got a board table in the room. It's long, it's an immovable object that you can't move around very well. And they get everybody in to talk. They start talking. Not all voices are heard, because there will be the louder voices. There will be the people that are quieter, who don't feel comfortable to speak in front of the large group, or they're reflectors, in which case they need a bit more time to think. So they're talking about the strategy, and then they get to the end of the day, there's some decisions that are made, and then decisions might not stick, or they leave the meeting and be like, what did we say the strategy was? Did you write that down? Did I write? Where's this shared resource? So when we're working visually with groups, we literally will paper a wall. So we love I could talk for an hour about meeting room design. That's a different topic. But you imagine we've papered the wall in a meeting room, and we start tracking what people are talking about during the meeting. So we work alongside the agenda and literally draw what people talk about, so that by the end of the day, there is the shared resource that everybody can use to say, oh, we discussed a lot of things. We know what our different strands to our strategy are. We also know what the challenges are. We know what the quick wins are, and we know what our next steps are to then go and share this with the team. So that's an example. But a completely different example would be, say, you've got 400 people coming together for a values day in a business. And they want to talk about the values. It's all fun. They just want to get everybody together and just celebrate the successes, share the values, do some group work about how these values are going to live within the organization, and then send everybody on their merry way. A visual in that case would be a shared resource tool where everybody's like, yeah, we were part of this day. We know the values. This was really important to me because, and they've got but it's about that shared resource afterwards, as well as supporting the conversations during. So Ellie, does that make sense in terms of understanding a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, I know you work with some really big businesses, which is great. But do you think this is effective for all businesses, like small businesses as well? Surely this is like a great way of making meetings more efficient and getting stuff done. Is that right?
100%. So yes, in larger organizations, yes, in smaller organizations. It's literally anybody that is having a conversation or a meeting. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're doing it. It's about working visually to really support a group to get stuff done. So it doesn't matter if you're only selling chocolate bars, or only working on sustainability. It doesn't matter. You can work in this way wherever you are.
There's something you said I wanted to pick up on, because I thought it was really interesting. So you mentioned earlier, like you were describing the typical meeting scenario, the typical bad meeting scenario, and you said something. You said not all voices are heard, which I think is really important, because we were doing a workshop a few weeks ago, and we came up with this as like a management, leadership, communication type workshop, and we came up with this idea that sometimes, like, our job as leaders is to try and be good at listening, and had this idea that sometimes the most important thing to listen to is the things that aren't being said, like in a scenario. So I just wondered, like, how do you pick up on that? How if that's what we have to listen for, how do you get it out there?
It is a great question. I'm just thinking. So,
because it might be it might be someone's not saying something, but you can tell something. You can like feel sometimes when there's something going on.
So, question: when you're having in this meeting, because it sounds like you're thinking about a specific meeting that you had. What was your process for how you had that how you had the meeting? So what did you do? If I was in the meeting room, what would I see?
Well, I don't know how good I am at meetings. Now I've started listening to you. I've got all these notes on my notepad here.
Amazing.
But yeah, normally I would try and like I thought about this a lot, to be fair, but normally I'll try and send an agenda across beforehand, and I'll say, here is our objective. And I always try and make sure that it's like, we want to work out how to fix this problem, by doing X or something. And then I'll say to people, like, can we try and come up with what you think the solution is, or the problem, or both, probably both, before the meeting. And then in the meeting, can everybody say, here's my idea, here's my idea, here's my idea. And then we try and sort of, then this is the bit where it gets hard. We try and sort of agree what we're going to do at the end of it, But there's always stuff that's not being said. Like you said, often you just get bigger characters, and there are bigger characters that like control the conversation. And there are people that just, they don't talk so much, or they're not comfortable getting their ideas out there. But how do you guys approach trying to pick up on that, and trying to like shine a light on it, and trying to get everybody to consider these points?
So, I said at the beginning of this call, I give myself a different kind of role depending on who I'm speaking to. I am bridging more over into facilitation here. So I just want to call out that I've got my facilitator hat on, and I've got my visualizer hat on as well. So just flicking between the two. So I love that you send people you call them the objectives. You send people the objectives before the meeting, and there is some pre-work or some pre-thinking to do to solve a problem, so that people are coming into the meeting warm. That you're setting the group up for success. What I also love is that you are getting the group together to do work together. More often than not, we see this thing called a meeting, and the leader will just speak at the participants they'll do a presentation and then be like, right, any questions? And they call that a meeting, but it's not making the most of the brains in the room. So what I like is that you're setting the context beforehand, that you're then giving people the space and the time to think beforehand. But then it sounds like you're getting into the meeting and then you're not quite getting the conversation that you need. And my assumption here is that it's because of the process that you're using to have that conversation. So this is where working visually comes in. So Jack, when you get people to share their input, how does that look like? Do people have a deck? Do people create posters? Do people just speak? How are people sharing their ideas?
People just speak, and to be fair, I think I'm more of a visual person, if that is a thing. But obviously, maybe not everybody is. But we don't really have like a way for people to be visual, really. So maybe that's our problem.
And now I'm starting to ask you questions. I know I'm meant to be answering the questions. So when we think about not having a way to work visually, I'm going to say maybe. Because when we think about working visually, there are many different ways that we can do it. So for example, you say to everybody, right, do you all work in the office? Mm-hmm. Pretty much. Yeah. So you might have some A3 pieces of paper and you say to everybody, right, we're going to have a session next week on this problem. I'd like everybody to create a poster. We're not going to do it on, or you can even use some of your boxes or some packaging. You can use whatever materials that you've got. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can use whatever you've got around, and you can get people to write their big idea and 3 headlines about their big idea for solving this problem.
I like
which means that when you get into the meeting, people can use that as a presentation tool, because it will help the person who's presenting it to have a visual resource. But it means that when the next person shares their idea, the other one isn't lost. It's still present in the room. You know, we see the same thing with PowerPoint decks. Like somebody will do a presentation and then they'll click next on the PowerPoint slide and then it's gone. And then you're like 50 slides deep in this presentation thinking, what was the first thing that they talked about? So being able to get the visual information up in the room is really helpful for a group. So that would help your team to share their ideas. It would also help people when they're listening to look at what the key points are. And then what you might do once, say you've got 5 ideas, I don't know what the design is, but say you've got 5 ideas that people are sharing, you might give some time people to think. Because what happens very, very often is that we go straight into conversation mode. And that's when you get your loudest voices first or your quick reflectors first. And then you start to leave behind the people that might be slower or not slower, who need more time to think about their idea or more time to think about their response. And so you get everybody level in terms of, right, you know what, we're going to have 2 minutes thinking time. And by the way, as a facilitator, 2 minutes thinking time can feel like ages. And you've got to hold your nerve to think, you know, I'm not going to just leap in to fill this silence. And then what you do is you'd hear from each person. So, but, you know, you go into your 2 minutes, say, right, after all these presentations, we're going to have some time to think. And then you've highlighted, you've signposted, we're going to have time to think. And then you'll say something like, right, so now we're going to have 2 minutes thinking time. What I want you to do in that time is think about what you really like and what could be better. So you're giving them a framework. And then you say something like, at the end of these 2 minutes, I'm going to hear from everybody. So everybody knows that you're going to come to them and you'll say, I just want the key headline. I don't need a full spiel of paragraph after paragraph. It's just the thing that you want to say. So you're signposting to people that everybody will be heard. That's just one idea that you could use. There are hundreds of ideas. But does that give you kind of something to think about there?
Oh, helps me massively. That sounds amazing. It sounds like very like laser focused as well, because I think often, like, from my experience, probably everyone listening as well, often when you have meetings, it's like we just sort of ramble on and we sort of go from different random rabbit holes, and then we end up sort of ending the meeting being like, what was that about?
And it
So,
happens, and it happens in organizations, to Ellie's point, big or small. These types of conversations and how we have conversations and meetings is a universal challenge for many people.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second and just
go for it?
What if there's someone listening that's thinking, sounds great, Ellie, but we don't have time for all of this, brainstorming and drawing and presenting and stuff? What would you say to those people that say they don't have time for that?
I would ask them, why don't they have time? And I bet you the answer is, well, I'm just in back-to-back meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the meetings are going on and on. We're not getting to the decisions. We're going around in circles. So then we need to get another meeting in. We leave the meeting with a big list of actions. We don't get to the work. And I'd say, invest the time in having a really good meeting, and you'll surprise yourself at how much work you do. And it will have a knock-on effect into the rest of your calendar to have more time. And on the visual thing, I would say that if when you're having meetings, you're saying you don't have time to work visually, but yet you're just doing a PowerPoint presentation and then a conversation, I'd say that it works, but it's a hugely missed opportunity because of the brains that you've got in the room. And you need to design processes and ways for people to work to really get the best from the brains in the room. So I'd shift the mindset on working visually is a fun thing to do, and to it being a mindset where working visually and having the right process in place can really support me and my team to do some really great work.
I think the word fun there is quite important as well, that you said, because I guess, how many people have meetings at work and they're like, got that meeting. Whereas if we can kind of reframe it so the psychology is like, yes, got that meeting, I can get my idea out there, or
Yeah, and like you say, so many times we get given these PowerPoints, and do we ever look at them after the meeting? Do they ever get sent on, don't they? But
yeah,
they just seem to get forgotten about. So
exactly. And to that point, Ellie, when we think, I mentioned earlier about the event. So people are coming together to talk about their values, and it's going to be a really energizing day, and everybody's going to be proud of the work that's been done and the team that they're part of. When we think about those types of visuals, they get printed in the office. We don't need to use the meeting minutes. We've got one shared resource. But then these resources we're finding now are also going into research documents. They're going into white papers. They're being used on websites. There is so much use for these visuals that means that we don't have to read that slide deck. There are many other ways of engaging groups around the content that you've been discussing. So again, there, I think it's a huge opportunity.
What is the psychology behind visualizing meetings? Do you think, well, obviously you believe it works, it inspires action. How exactly does it work?
Right. So when you think about it, think back to a time of cave paintings and hieroglyphics, but surprisingly, we weren't there. So if we think back to more of a place of which we might be able to remember when we were little, when we were learning how to read and write, all of our books were picture books, and we built up being able to read, but using pictures as a base of what we're learning. And I don't know, if a psychologist was here, they would say, oh, there's all these stats. I don't have all those stats. But what I do know is that visual learning and visual ways of working can improve engagement by up to 400%. And that's huge. So being able to see ideas in one place can just massively help people. I don't know what it does for our brain. I don't know what it does for decision making. But what I do know is that when I'm in meetings, when people do work visually, the outputs are brilliant. When I'm a participant, which happens sometimes where there isn't any visuals. I can only see the type of meeting that it is, and it's very, very different.
Yeah. Is there ever a bad time to have a meeting, or it doesn't have to be a meeting, but some sort of collaborative brainstorming workshopy type thing? Is there ever a bad time to have it, or I'm thinking like Monday mornings, Friday afternoons?
And when you say bad time, is that because of the time in the week? Is that because of people's energy? Is that because of the assumptions that people are making about the meeting? So when we say time,
Well, yeah. Well, in my example, what I'm thinking is like often we'll have like big meetings on a Monday morning, like for the week. Here's our plan for the week, our strategy and stuff. And I think that's quite common in most businesses, but often people are kind of like half asleep, and it's a bit of a graveyard shift kind of meeting. But I'm just thinking, is it that we just need to learn how to facilitate those meetings better, or how to use some of your strategies, or is it more that meetings on a Monday morning are a bad idea?
It's an interesting question. And I think, when we get booked for meetings, they are on every day of the week at any time between 8 and 6. You often hear people coming in to do a speaker slot, and there's always that joke that's like, oh, I've got the slot after lunch. It's the graveyard shift. And it's like, well, really? I was at an event a few weeks ago, and they had a sleep expert do the slot after lunch, and it was brilliant. He had everybody laughing, he had everybody up. It wasn't what you'd normally expect from the slot after lunch. But when we think about timings, and I do think it comes back to how you're having these meetings, because if you're just going to speak at somebody for an hour about a topic, some people absolutely love that. We have to acknowledge that some people, their preference isn't to work visually, and they just love black and white text in an 100-page document, and that's absolutely fine. So we make sure we build that stuff in for those who want it. But when we think about how you're having the meeting, I've lost the question now, because I'm like, thinking about the session. But I'd say there doesn't have to be a bad time. I think you need to think about how you're getting stuff done. So, for example, you can use going outside as a meeting. We need to make a decision on such and such. Let's all go out on a walk. Go in pairs. Think about this topic. Come back, and by the end of the topic, we want all the ideas, and then we'll make a decision. So you don't have to all sit in the. If it's not working for your team, that a Monday morning sitting around the board table or the table, or in your wherever you are, to have a conversation isn't working, mix up the process. Do it in a different room. Go stand in a circle in the kitchen where people are having their coffees. Think about the process to really support the brains to do the work that they need to do. So in answer to your question, I think you could ask people what's their preference for this meeting. It's a really important meeting. I want to make sure we get the best from everybody. Change your process and be known as that Monday morning meeting. That's the really good one. We always do something different. We have great conversations, and we really get stuff done in the meeting. And you're known, and you've got that reputation.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I guess sometimes it's kind of like disrupting people's pattern as well, kind of take them out of their mindset. But we're moving premises soon, and the new premises, we're on a farm at the moment. Unfortunately, we're moving to a horrible industrial estate, but there's like a lake with like a nature reserve next to it, and it's like a 1 mile, like a mini lake nature reserve with a 1 mile walk around it. So in my mind, I was thinking, maybe I could try, like, rather than a Monday morning meeting, it's Monday morning walk around the lake. That was my rough kind of idea, to try and disrupt people and try and make it productive. And yeah, what do you think about that? Is that a good idea?
I just got goosebumps when you said that. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that some people will love the idea. Some people, most of like my team are. I put well-being of my team front and center. A lot of us will run, some people do gardening, but we're very much about being a whole human. One of my team did the London Marathon recently. I do long distance triathlon, so so the idea of going for a walk on a Monday morning, I'm like, yes, we are there. But you can imagine if you did your walk, and you might, because it's your permanent location, you might have different areas of the lake that you start to anchor. So by the time you get to this point, you might say, what's my intention for the week? By the time you get to, so if that's at a certain point, the next point you might say, what one big thing do we want to achieve together this week? And so you can start to anchor it, so then people know. And then your third one might be, what did we learn last week that we can build on this week? So, you can think about your own questions, but you start to anchor it so people do know where they're getting to, and you've got different pit stops, if you like, around the lake. And it gives you a chance to like regroup as a team at the different points as well. But you might actually just want to just do a walk, come back, share your intention. But you can play around with space and movement and fresh air and things like that.
I've not told you about this walk around the lake idea yet. I even thought we could change the name of it, so we don't have meetings, we just have walks around the lake.
Sneaky.
Walk around the lake, sounds less intimidating.
People don't know it's a meeting. Right?
Yeah. But just share it with people, like, look, I want to do meetings in a different way. I know that, we need to have a great start to the week on a Monday. And as the leader of this team and this business, these are the 3 things that I'd like us to get to. Each Monday, we'll go for a walk around the lake. If it's raining, we might do something a bit different, or just bring your wellies and you're waterproof and we'll do it anyway. So you can think about how you frame it to people, but share your working out. So I think a lot of the time, people think they've got to do something and it all be seamless and perfect. But actually, we're human. There are mistakes. We try things. We've got to try things to learn. And I think that as humans, we're so, unless, what I often say to my team is, unless you put yourself in, as humans, we don't put ourselves in hard situations often enough. So I know that in sport, I signed up for a half Ironman 2 years ago, and I'd never really I did running and a bit of cycling, but I'd never swam 1.2 miles. It was going to be tricky. I didn't really know how to do it, but I got a swim coach. Put myself in a difficult situation of learning how to swim for that amount of distance. You could do a swim in your lake.
Swim around the
lake. But to put ourselves in difficult situations is something that we should do more of. And through that's when we learn. And it's not always going to be perfect, but we've got to give it a go. Otherwise, we just don't improve and get better. So I think to share your working out, do you know what? I had a conversation last week. I'm going to change things with my meetings. Are you all right to give it a go? Everybody will say, yeah, all right, Jack. And then give it a go, and then review it.
Yeah, I love share your working out. I haven't heard that before.
I
because so often people will be like, "Oh, why are we doing this? Oh no, I don't want to." I think just as
raining. Just as a principle for everything, though, like share your working out. What a great phrase! I mean, it doesn't have to be a meeting thing. It's just in business, we're always coming up with ideas. We're always working out how to fix problems, and we're always evolving. I love that.
It goes back to when we used to do maths exams.
Yeah.
And you couldn't just write your answer on the line. You had to share your working out. I'm thinking, no, I don't know what the answer is. I don't even know the sum. But you have to, there's space in the exam paper to do your calculations so the examiner can see how you got to that number. So that's where that comes from.
Nice.
I love that story.
So do you have any tips on how we can make meetings like better for the planet, more environmentally sustainable? I guess if you're just walking around a lake, I mean that's quite sustainable, but I'm thinking more like if you're creating a lot of resources or you've got a big digital footprint, what are your tips?
It's a good question. So when we think about where do I want to start with this? So there's something about materials, there's something about travel, and something about having really good online meetings. So I think there's kind of some different areas here, and I'm going to touch on all of those. As a business, when COVID hit, we were relying on going to people's offices or wherever they were booking venues and helping them have good meetings. So whether that's facilitating the meeting or whether that's visualizing the meeting. And doing really well online was something that we thought, we'll get better at that one day. It'll be something that we'll do one day. And then COVID happened and it was like, oh my goodness, we can't go to these meeting rooms. Our business could have just gone under. Like it was really could have been really bad. But we really quickly got really good at online. And so our clients were calling us like, we're having an online meeting, we can't travel anymore. How do we have a really good online meeting? Now we are the experts in online meetings. They are really, really good. But when I think about, you know, how teams now, when we're thinking about sustainability goals for organizations, a lot of the time now they're only getting together once or twice a year because they know that they can work really well online. So I think even though COVID was awful, there is some good practice that has come out of that in terms of working remotely. So that's one thing. When I think about other ways of sustainability in meetings, well, I can speak to events. We know that in events, there is so much waste. That in exhibition halls, you know, I walked in once and there was just like just rubbish and waste, and I'm like, what are you doing with this? And it'll just get put out, and it's just it just fills me with such sadness that we're living on this beautiful planet and not everybody has the shared belief of doing good for the planet. It gets to me. So what we're doing is, you know, we don't use foam board. We know foam board can't be recycled. A lot of people in our industry of graphic recording do still use foam board. They're amazing at what they do, but I think it's not a good thing to use. And that's why when we found our boxes, your boxes, and I want to speak to that properly in a minute. But thinking about what we can individually do and as small businesses to support, because we know that these big exhibitions and events, they're doing their bit, but it's going to be gradual. So I think there's that kind of mindfulness and just not giving away stuff for stuff's sake. You don't need a branded pen. It's just not needed, or you don't need a branded mug. They're going to take it home and not use it. So I think there's lots of things that people do because they think it's a nice to have, when actually it's not a nice to have. Think about an experience rather than a gift. Ellie, do you have, I know you asked me the question, do you have a point of view or a perspective you can share?
No, I totally agree. I agree with those points. I think one thing we forget is our digital footprint, isn't it? When you're even like sending emails, and even, you know, we're doing this on Zoom at the moment, and I think that will have some kind of impact on the environment. But I think we spoke to somebody and they said just turning your camera off when you're on a Teams meeting can reduce the impact of that call. Apparently, I can't remember how much by, but
that I didn't know that.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yes, then again, that really is.
But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's so much useless merchandise out there that's non-recyclable. And probably just ends up in landfill, really.
Yes, and I saw something the other day from the former CEO of BP, who's left, and he was talking about the impact of AI and how much energy it takes for you to make a video using AI. I'm trying to look on LinkedIn now to find it. I can't find it quickly enough. But it hadn't crossed my mind that asking AI to do something would then have a massive impact. And then if everybody's asking AI to do stuff, how much heat is that generating? How much, you know, and all of the things that go with that.
They have these like big like server farms, don't they? Like out in the middle of nowhere that go on for thousands of miles, just obviously burning energy effectively, you know, to keep them going. Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting. But is it?
But just one thing, just to Ellie's point. So there's the sustainability side of turning your camera off, which I think is a really good thing. But then also when you're in a meeting and then you can't see the person, some people don't want to put their cameras on because they just don't feel comfortable, and I respect their want to do that. But then it's like getting the balance between doing right for the planet and then doing right by people and doing right by the conversation and the business, and it's like such a interwoven thing to navigate.
Oh, it's very, yeah,
you've got to
it's
be
very complicated.
You've got to be careful, I guess, not to think, oh, how do we, reduce the impact, and then find that you just make the meeting worse.
I guess it just comes into
disengaged.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I guess it comes into just measuring your impact and then looking at how you can reduce that over time, which is another topic completely, but something that hopefully all businesses should be doing.
Yes,
and that's another point.
yes,
for another podcast. But,
so I know you did kind of touch on it, but so how do you make sure that if you have like a Zoom or a Teams session, how do you make sure that is as engaging and as productive as a I'm going to call it real life meeting or session?
So the answer is you work visually. So there are many different tools now you can use online. So the likes of Mural, Miro, they are online collaborative workspaces. Have you used either of those tools before?
I've never heard of them.
I'm going to send you the link straight after this. Miro is like the most brilliant tool, and it's like a never-ending workspace where you get ideas. So you can add sticky notes. You've got this shared resource. You don't have to save it; it just automatically saves. All those things. You can add people to the board so people can contribute to it. In there as well, earlier we talked about processes. There are many different processes and pre-designed templates that you can use. So if you're thinking about doing a SWOT analysis, for example, you can pull that tool into the workspace. So you can still work visually, but using these tools. Other things that are really good are you can use timers. So putting a stopwatch on if somebody's doing a presentation. You don't have to do we often talk about not doing all the heavy lifting yourself. So sharing the responsibility of the group for keeping time, get a shared timer on the screen. Or if you're, what else can you do? You could still go on your walk. Everybody could go outside, log in on their phone, go get some fresh air. Let's have a conversation about such and such being outside. So you can play around with it and think of it as an enabler for conversation rather than, we're online, it's not going to be good. You can still do your breakout sessions. You can still do paired conversations. I love the online meetings. Does that give you some ideas?
Yeah, lots of ideas. Yeah, I like how you said it's almost kind of like how you frame it. You were saying like you can actually look at it more as a benefit than a drawback. I think that's so true. Often it is just about framing, right? How we frame stuff.
And one thing there is in an online space to sit and stare at your computer for like 8 hours, it is draining. So when you're working remotely, you don't feel like you've got to put a full one-day meeting in. Do a series of short sprints, which the beauty of that is it gives people space and time to think in between the sessions. So you have, say, a 90-minute session on such and such, you're framing the problem. 2 days later or the day later, you have the next 90 minutes, but you've had that space to think. Do you ever find that when you're in a meeting, the decision will be made and then they just unstick, or people come out of the meeting like, well, I didn't agree with that decision, or I'm not.
Usually when I'm in the shower, I'll have a great idea like a few hours later.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh,
so what you can, if you build in space between making decisions, it can really help because you're thinking about the people that we talked about earlier who might be slower to think about things. Build in that space. That's why online meetings are great as well, because you've not got the expense of bringing everybody together and feel like you need to get everything done in one day.
So you founded Lim when you were 30, is that right?
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about what it's like being a female founder? Have you experienced any barriers, and how can we encourage more women in business?
Oh, I love it. So, right. So I founded Lim at 30, yes. That was 2 years ago. We're now 2, which is super exciting. We're having our very first Lim team day, face-to-face, tomorrow. So I've
Nice.
written my agenda, everybody's had the prep and all the stuff. But I've been doing this work since I was 21, 22, so it's been a while now. And when I first started, I was freelance, and I was doing this thing called graphic recording. And it took me a while with some clients to build up the trust and respect that I needed, because first of all, I was young. I'd never really been in a meeting myself. And then I was going and drawing what they were talking about. It was like I needed to do learning, and I needed to learn how to speak to these senior leaders. And I'm thinking, but they're doing this really cool thing. And who am I anyway to be drawing this stuff? So I had to really there was something around gaining the trust and respect. But then I had to work really hard, because as a freelancer, you're only as good as your last job. So I had to work really hard to build up my client base, which is what I did. So then by the time it gets to being 30, that's crazy, 30, and think, right, okay, I want to now have a team who are doing this, because I truly believe in the power of working visually for groups. It felt like a very, very natural thing for me to do. What I didn't expect was, okay, it's great to be a freelancer, doing graphic recording. I can do that. When it comes to growing a business and running a team, it's very different. I've never really been employed. So I've had a manager when I was a waitress and when I did my ski season, but not a manager where you have reviews, where you have all these like HR-y things. That's just also new to me. So whilst I am so good at the graphic recording, understanding client briefs, really delighting clients, I am doing a lot of learning about how to grow a business and how to run a team, and how to do it to the best of my ability to make sure that we are doing the best work we can for clients. So that's been a learning thing. So I just need to spend more time listening to podcasts, reading, asking questions. But the beauty is that I am surrounded by amazing senior leaders every day, given the work that we do. So I feel like my learning is happening really quickly, because now I'm in these meetings, I'm really able to pick up on how these leaders are being, what they're doing, and what I would like to take to do for myself, and in terms of a person, but also what I think, I'm not sure I like that. I don't think I'd like to give that thing or that kind of topic or conversation a go. But when it comes to now being a female in business, my immediate thing is that, and this might be not what people say, but I don't tend to notice it. The reason being is that it's my mindset. I believe that I stand shoulder to shoulder with whoever the leader is, whoever the client is, whoever the person is, shoulder to shoulder with them. And so my mindset helps me to put my best self forward to do the work that we need to do. So I don't, it's really interesting. I don't see it, but yeah, I do.
Maybe it's just because you've got the right mindset. Maybe it's people pick up on that. Maybe like when you're with people, you just, the way you carry and hold yourself, people just, give you the credibility that you deserve, maybe.
Yeah.
And you founded this at 18, didn't you, or something? So you pretty much left school, and I feel like you had a similar problem with people not taking you seriously.
Well, we used to. So basically, we hired this guy, still works here, called Henry, and he's got grey hair. And he was the only old person that worked for us. Oh, sorry, not old person. Sorry, adult.
I feel like you shouldn't say that.
And I,
older.
I was like one of those people that I just always looked about 13.
Yeah, you've aged very recently.
I now look slightly older. And we used to go for like meetings, sometimes at like big companies.
You should tell her about when you got your car stuck.
Oh no, no! But we used to go for like these meetings, and because what we do is quite unique, we'd get like some quite good opportunities. So go down to like a meeting at Unilever or something, and that was like before social media was so big. I remember I'd go for a meeting with Henry, and we'd get there, and they would just assume that Henry was me, just because he was like the adult with like the grey hair. They'd be like, "Oh, hold this." But then I think it slowly, quite quickly evaporated. I think it was just more because in my mind I was like, actually, no, this is my,
it's a confidence thing as well.
It's the way you carry yourself, I think.
Yeah. And the story you've just told, I saw the former CEO of Gymshark speak a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling the same story of when the lads started Gymshark, and he was and then this guy was the adult. He was like, when these kids were like doing all this amazing stuff, and he was like the grown up. So I'm sure that happens quite a lot as well. But this talks to the next generation being the generation we should really support to do the stuff because they're really good and really cool. The other thing to say is that my mum has always said to me, always ask for what you need. Just always ask.
Yeah.
And now that is, if something's not clear, ask. And I must just do this day to day. And one of my team was in a bit of a tricky situation a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Do you know what I did, Ellie?" It's like, "What did you do?" And she went, "Well, I just said to myself, what would Ellie do?" And I was like, and I sat there like, "Oh right, yeah, okay." And inside I was like, wow, she really just must look up to me, and I just do what I do, not realizing that my team are learning from me about how I approach things. So that was like a big compliment, really. She's a young female. She's an amazing illustrator. But just to get that recognition, say, do you know what would Ellie do? Was like, oh, I love that. Yeah.
I think as well, just that whole, just like, just ask. Just in general, just asking for stuff. I recently, my girlfriend wanted to like move offices at work. So I won't go into the full story, but she wanted to like work in a different office, and she was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna work really hard for like the next year, and then I'll ask them next year." And I was like, "Why don't you just ask them today?" And she was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could ask them." And I was like, "Just ask them. What's the worst going to happen?" And she asked them. They were like, "Yeah, no worries. You can move offices." But people get it in their heads sometimes.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. People just get it in their head sometimes that like, they have to build up to stuff, or they have to, unless, yeah.
You just ask, and it's the same. It'll be the same with you when you're doing your business development. You send emails, you have conversations with people who send proposals. Sometimes they're like, "Yeah, great." Sometimes they don't reply, and you think, "Oh, they just say no." It doesn't. You can learn from it, but it's not going to make you a horrible person just because somebody said no to you. Or you'll learn from it, and goes back to putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. That's where the learning and the development happens.
Yeah.
Nice. So what's next for Lim?
What's next for Lim? So I touched on earlier that we've got our first team day tomorrow. I mean, we have online sessions, but this will be the first time my whole team is in the room together, which is super exciting. So I've got a brilliant team of illustrators. I've got an amazing person who does our words, an amazing person that does all of our organizing, and I love what we're creating together. So as we get busier and busier with client work, we'll obviously grow our team. But when I think about running the team, and I know from working with clients that sustainability is top of their list, and something that I haven't quite figured out yet is is it that we want to become B Corp? Is it that, and I know from people that I've spoken to, it's a lot of work. And my challenge at the moment is, how do I get that accreditation, being such a small team, needing to deliver the client work? So that's kind of I know you're B Corp, so I want to, one of the questions I want to ask you at some point is just about your learnings. But yeah, thinking about how we keep doing amazing client work, how we do the right thing with sustainability that people can understand, because we're doing things, all the different bits, but it's not all tied up with one big bow to say, ta-da, this is what we're doing. But my big dream, and I can't do all this in the first 2 years, is to have studios in different cities across the world so we can really serve our global clients, but also really support talent in those areas as well, because we know that there are brilliant people all over the world, and I want to bring them into the team. So that's my big dream. I can't do it all in 2025, but there'll be steps that we make towards that.
Sounds exciting.
It is so exciting.
So can you talk to us about a recent project you did that involved some used cardboard boxes?
Oh, used boxes.
Yes, I wonder where we got those from. So yes, we had a client that we're working with on a few different projects over the course of this year, and all of their events, they invite people who work in the meetings events industry. And we were in the first event with them, we drew on a big piece of paper. So we had a 3 meter piece of paper that we hang on boards that we hire. So we've got a supplier called Pinpoint Facilitation, and we hire the boards from them, and they send them, we stick the paper up, and then we take it down. So that's great. So we did that at one event, and then the next event we did, I think it was a 6 meter board, and we did some digital iPad graphics, which was really cool. Great interest and response from the people that were at the meeting and at the event. And then I was speaking to the team, and I was like, look, we could do something really cool here. Like, we're working with events people. We want to be leading the way in visualizing business content. That is our vision. What can we do that's leveling up what we've done? And I'd seen something that a friend of mine had done a few years ago using boxes. And I've always wanted to do something using boxes, but I hadn't quite found the right client and hadn't built up enough trust with the client to let me do what I wanted to do, if that makes sense. Anyway, I was on a call with one of my team. She's also called Ellie. And I was like, Ellie, I want to draw on cardboard boxes for this event. Can you have a look? Literally, we hung up the phone, and within 60 seconds, she sent me your website and was like, Ellie, look at this. It's so cool. We're using cardboard boxes. We don't have to buy new. I was like, wow, that is so good. So anyway, we looked, and I have to tell you, I spoke to your team. When we are working with new suppliers, you know what it's like. You always want to make sure that things are going to be delivered on time. There's going to be the right amount of stuff. So I must have called twice, and we spoke to 2 different people, and they were so brilliant. And so we went to an event in London with one of your house moving packs, and I think, I wasn't at the event. Do they come flat pack?
Yeah. Yes,
then you put them, yeah. So we're all on the stacked. Ellie and Connie put the boxes together, and as the 2-day event happened, they were drawing all the key insights and key messages from the presentations, from the conversations with the participants on the boxes. We're stacking them and moving them. And it was so cool. And they finished, and I was literally like leaping up and down. They were sending me photos. I was like, this is so amazing. And then Ellie, the other Ellie said, Ellie, I've now, because we weren't covered by any NDAs, she said, I've listed the boxes on Gumtree, and somebody's coming to collect them, and they can now use them as cardboard boxes just with our illustrations on. So we got good photos for the clients. They were delighted with what we created, but also the fact that we've done good by reusing some boxes. We've delighted the client with what we've done, and then we've given them away to somebody else, and it just feels so wholesome to have done something so good for a variety of reasons. So that's what we did.
Love that story.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
We've got a video. I'll send. We've got it on our website. I'll send you a link to it so you can have a look and see it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Thank you.
And we like to always end on asking the same question, really, which is, where do you see the world in 10 years from your perspective?
It's a question of, there's so much excitement, and also, oh gosh, what's going on in the world? So I'm coming at this from a view of what I would love, not speaking about all the bad stuff like the politics and all the unrest and all those things. So my first thing is that I want to see a world where people are kind to each other, where people listen to each other, and people are curious and want to learn from each other. So kindness and respect is a big thing for me. The other thing is that I want people to look after their health. You know, I touched on earlier about being healthy and sports, but really looking after their self and their health from an inside out perspective. You know, eating local food from local farms, supporting local, not needing to have food that's just wrapped in plastic. You know, all the microplastics is just so bad. So just eating good food from local suppliers. And I suppose all of that is in service of respecting this beautiful planet that we are on, because it is so gorgeous. We're so lucky to have this planet, and we all need to respect it properly in the way it should be. But then I think the other thing is around empowering young people to explore the routes that they want to take with their careers, and to really support young people to give stuff a go. And like we said, the worst that people can say is no, or they don't like it. Try something different. And of course, an events industry that isn't using ridiculous amounts of, creating ridiculous amounts of waste. I think that's 4 things I said, maybe 5.
Nice. I like your vision for the future.
Yes. Very good.
Cool. I guess that's kind of a wrap then.
Yeah. No, thank you for joining us. It's been
yeah, it was fun.
Thank you.
It's been a good one.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. We hope it was truly
Earth your while.
For more information, visit reuserbox.co.uk/earthyourwhile.
And if you'd like to appear on the next series of Earth Your While, please email media@reuserbox.co.uk.